Hello, this is Nima Golubai on KUCI 88.9 Irvine. So we're back for another episode of Rollercoaster in the Clouds. So I talked about the possibility of doing Nuremberg, and once again I did not watch it, but that's fine because I watched something else. We will get to Nuremberg eventually. Maybe next week, maybe the week after that, maybe the week after that. But I definitely will do it this season of the show. And I am excited to see it, but I'm also it's not like I need to see it right now. And also, like I said, I think it's like $25 on Apple TV right now. So maybe it's dropped in price, maybe it hasn't. But for now, I watched a movie which was War of the Planet of the Apes, which is part of the, I don't even know what it's called, but it's like the, let's see, Planet of the Apes trilogy. What is the trilogy called? It's like, it goes Rise, Dawn, and then War of the Planet of the Apes. It's with Andy Serkis as the main character, who's Caesar. And if I was doing my normal 1 hour show, I would definitely do like a whole review of the trilogy, but since we only have one, I'm going to do a very, very short review of the first two movies, and then like 90% will be War of the Planet of the Apes, which is what I just saw. Um, and the main thing I want to say about the first two is like an interesting parallel I came up with in my head. But first of all, I'd like to say I really like this trilogy. I think it's very good, and I do think it's kind of ignored. I don't hear many people talking about the Planet of the Apes trilogy, but I think it is a very good trilogy of movies, and it does certain things very, very well. I think it falls short in a few areas. Specifically, I think that in terms of cinematography, the trilogy is a little bit too digitized for me. And I actually don't mean the CGI apes, which I think are really good. I mean like simple things like lighting and the nature at times. Like you can tell it's been very digitally made. And it just doesn't seem very realistic at points. But nonetheless, it's directed pretty well. Just not great. And the first movie is maybe my favorite, with maybe the last one was a bit better, I don't know, but essentially this is when Caesar, who's an ape, starts to evolve into a human because of a Alzheimer's drug that his owner, played by James Franco, starts testing on him. And he becomes like really smart, and there's like he's like living at home with James Franco's character, um, who's a scientist, and then like all of a sudden Caesar basically defends his family. Basically, James Franco's dad's character, who has Alzheimer's, is like on the street and he's getting bullied by one of their neighbors who's like treating him horribly. So Caesar comes in and attacks the man, and then he gets thrown into like a zoo basically, or like a containment cell, and he gets all sad and um yeah, he basically learns that humans are not really all apes friends, and he grows distant from James Franco's character, who is like his father, and he basically starts a rebellion at the zoo, and this is where he learns to be a hero and a leader. But at the end of the movie, he definitely like is on good terms with his father character, but he acknowledges that he's an ape and he has to live in the jungle and he has to protect other apes. I really like this movie. I think it's very sweet, and it actually has some really good emotional power. I specifically like, and I really want to talk about this. This is a parallel. So the house that Caesar grew up in James Franco's character's house, had this like very iconic window. Um, And Caesar would always look out the window, like as a child. He's an ape, but you know what I mean. Like he's a little child ape. He would always look out this window and look at the people playing outside, and that was his room, and that's where he grew up. And it's sort of a symbol of his childhood, but also his like mental peace. And then when he's taken away and put in like the zoo, like the prison basically, I loved this scene where he drew the window on his prison wall, and it reminded me a lot, and it later becomes a symbol of his rebellion in the second movie. And it reminded me a lot of, and people are not going to get this at first, but I'll explain it, Citizen Kane. And if you haven't seen Citizen Kane, you won't know, and perhaps you don't want to hear this. So if you haven't seen Citizen Kane, stop watching for 5 minutes and come back. Okay, I'm going to say it now. In Citizen Kane, if you don't know, the whole movie is based around a man who's based on William Randolph Hearst. We get to see him as a child, and then we get to see him grow up. And his last words were Rosebud. And nobody knows why this very powerful businessman, this extremely powerful man, said these random words the moment he died. And everybody's trying to figure out why he said a Rosebud. And the ending twist, the reveal at the end of the movie, is Rosebud was what was written. I believe this is what it was, if my memory is correct. It was written on his sled that he used to use as a kid, and we saw this in the movie. And in the beginning of the movie, he was sledding down like these, like snow hills as a little kid. And basically, it's actually a really beautiful reveal, and it's quite emotional because it shows that no matter how hard this guy was on the outside, how tough, how many unsavory things he did, no matter what, how deep he buried his humanity, at the end of the day, in his final moments, he connected back to his childhood when he had no money, no power. He didn't, he wasn't who he became to be. And that was like, it added so much to the complexity of the character because you knew that deep down he still was that little boy and he still had that heart. Similarly, in Planet of the Apes, the window is a symbol of Caesar's, I'm sorry. Why did I say Oscar? Caesar's like innocence, his childhood, and he never lets it go. Even when he's like mad at James Franco's character for abandoning him at the zoo. He didn't really abandon him, but that's how Caesar felt. He's still drawing that window because the window to him is, like I said, it's a symbol of his innocence. It's like peace of mind. It's his childhood. It's really just, it's like his humanity and his connection to humanity. So even when he's forming like a clique of apes, like a rebellion of apes, he's still connected to humans, and he still loves his father, who is James Franco's character. So we gotta move on to the next one. The next one is Dawn. Like I said, these are going to be very short reviews. Dawn was a little bit more self-contained, I would say. It's like, basically, there's an ape named Kuba. He's like an evil ape, and he's the villain here. Oh, Koba, sorry, not Kuba. And Koba basically rebels against Caesar and kills him, and everyone thinks Caesar's dead, so Koba takes over, and he goes to war with the humans, and everything goes wrong, and it's very entertaining. I really liked Gary Oldman's character. Another thing I like about this series is the humans are clearly the villains, but I will say they're also clearly not totally unjustified. And I like villains that have like complexity and some justification, because I'd say especially in the next one that's very true. But Gary Oldman's character is actually a pretty good guy, but he does try to like kill all the apes, but he's doing it from a position where he just can't trust the fact that they're not going to go to war and kill the humans, who are basically an endangered species. So he has to do whatever it takes to protect humanity. And yeah, so this is more of a war. Honestly, this is more a war movie than War of the Planet of the Apes, ironically. So yeah, but the movie ends and Caesar is triumphantly restored as leader. Caesar, if you will, because he's basically the emperor of the apes. And yeah, a lot of other things happen, like Caesar has a baby, not him personally, but his wife, and there's a lot of good scenes like that. But overall, really good. The only thing I don't really like about this movie is I'm not a fan of the actor Jason Clarke that plays Malcolm, who's like the good human. I've never liked this actor. I believe he was in one of the Terminator movies. Yeah, he was in Genesis, and that was my first introduction to this actor. Terminator Genesis, which I probably saw in like 2018. A horrifically bad movie, really, really terrible. And I've never liked this actor ever since then, so I think that he shouldn't have been in the movie. Other than that, everybody's doing good. And yeah, just a really good movie. Okay, now we're on the main subject of this review. War of the Planet of the Apes. I will do the synopsis. I would say this movie, interesting thing about it, I saw this movie actually when it came out, and I hadn't seen the other films that came before it. And I literally remembered nothing about this movie. Zero. And that's rare. I usually remember something. I couldn't remember a single thing about this movie, which was fine. Like I said, I just watched it a one-off in a theater when I was a kid. I do remember liking it. But yeah. So I sat down and watched it last night. And let's start with the synopsis. So it's 2028, 2 years after the battle in San Francisco. So that was the events of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And basically a U.S. Army battalion known as Alpha Omega, aided by apes derogatorily called donkeys, searches for Caesar's ape colony. A platoon assault on an ape outpost. Sorry, there's some typos here. Oh, a platoon assault an ape outpost, but the apes repel the attack and kill all but 4 humans, and a donkey gorilla named Red. Caesar releases the captured humans as a peacekeeping gesture, but Red escapes after attacking Winter, which is an albino ape. So basically, I'm sorry that was so bad, like me reading the synopsis. It's really phrased quite bad here. But anyway, this is a good scene which shows that like Caesar is still the wise leader. He takes some prisoners, the humans, and he basically says like, go back to your commander and tell him that like, I didn't start this war. I've killed the ape who did. So that was Koba. And basically, let's have peace and let's just not attack each other. And yeah, he lets them go. And then, yeah, they start making plans to like leave the area and go to somewhere where they'll be safe. But that night, in a pretty great scene, everybody's sleeping, but Caesar wakes up. And they're sort of in this cave area behind a waterfall. And Caesar sees lasers, like green lasers. And then he goes and feels in the water, and there's rope. So he sneaks around, and there's a team of U.S. They're not really U.S. soldiers because the United States doesn't exist, but they're like, they're Americans. Um, they're American soldiers that have infiltrated the cave and are looking to kill Caesar. And essentially, Caesar goes wandered around, looks at this, finds the soldiers, then rushes back to where he was sleeping. And in a really shocking scene, early in the movie, his wife and child are killed. And his child was actually a pretty big character in the last film, so it was it was definitely shocking to see. And yeah, so Caesar is in a rage and he attacks the commander, but the commander gets away. And yeah, at this point they start moving to go to their like promised land basically. It definitely had a lot of echoes of Exodus, I would say, from the Bible. And I would say like it has echoes of Exodus in terms of what's actually going on, but the visuals are very Western like. There's some like scenes of like convoys of the apes on horses that reminds me a lot of Westerns. And so Caesar leaves the convoy though, and he's essentially on a revenge quest to avenge his wife and child who were murdered by this commander. Let me get the commander's name. I kind of forget, but he was actually a damn good character, especially at the end. I was surprised. Oh, I guess he doesn't even have a name. He's just referred to as the Colonel. So Rocket is followed by, oh no, sorry, Caesar is followed by Rocket, Maurice, and Luca, and they're basically his bodyguards. I love Maurice. Maurice is my favorite. He's a very cute ape. A lot of the apes are pretty cute. And I would say like the CGI on the apes are really, really good. Like amazing, amazing work for whoever did it. It really looks quite realistic. Doesn't look like animation. I can't say that for some of the other CGI they used in the movie, but the apes really good. I have a theory about CGI that dark colors look way better. And also, when you shoot CGI in the dark, it usually looks way better. And basically, they're on a mission to find this military base where they can kill the colonel. And they stumble upon a village, and they kill the guy that's there, kind of by accident, but he pulled out a gun, so it's kind of his fault. And then they search more and they find the young man's daughter, and weirdly she cannot speak. So this is very is this kind of confusing, and what I really like about this film and this screenplay is it really actually sets up a lot of stuff that you have no idea what it is, but you just kind of like, huh, that's weird. And then you kind of forget about it, and then later it's revealed what's actually going on. It's actually quite rewarding. So, big compliment to that. So, you have no idea why this girl can't talk, but it's weird. And Maurice gives her a little doll that was on the floor of the house. They also find Winter, who is basically a spy who's defected, who's now working as a donkey for Alpha Omega. And they kill him, but they find out that the colonel's heading north to meet up with the rest of his military forces. Caesar accidentally kills Winter in retribution for his wife. Was it really accidentally? According to the synopsis, it is, but it didn't seem accidentally to me. He kills Winter in retribution for his wife and son, and to prevent him from alerting the soldiers. As they follow the colonel, Caesar's group discovers several dead soldiers who have been executed by their own troops, A fatally wounded survivor is revealed to be mute, just like the young girl they found. So something's going on. You don't know what it is. It's kind of weird. Sorry. At first I thought maybe their tongues were cut out. Not to be a bit graphic here, but I thought that might be what was going on. But then I was like, nah. So at this point, Caesar's group chases someone who has stolen one of their horses and discovers the thief is another intelligent ape called Bad Ape. He calls himself Bad Ape because that's what the people at the zoo called him, who matured in isolation. Now this character is very funny. I want to see who voices this guy because he was actually quite funny and he made me smile a lot. He was very cute. Okay, Steve Zane. I don't know who that guy is, but he was very funny. One sec. Just going back to the synopsis. Okay, so he guides them to a former weapons depot turned quarantine facility in the mountains that serves as the base for the militia. So they basically found where the colonel is right now. And a human patrol kills Luca, and an enraged Caesar tells Maurice, Rocket, and Bad Ape, and the little girl to turn back. Caesar attempts to infiltrate the base and discovers his whole tribe has been captured and forced into a labor camp before he is caught by Red, who is the traitor ape. Caesar deduces that the militia are using the apes to barricade the facility in order to fend off incoming military forces, which intend to attack rather than reinforce the militia. So, it's skipping a few things in the synopsis. Basically, there's a dialogue scene between the colonel and Caesar, tells him, he deduces that he's using the apes for labor to build this, wall. Which I was thinking, they gotta be pretty desperate to be building a wood wall, against the incoming army. And he also deduces that the colonel is not meeting up with friendly military forces. He's actually hunkered down in a military base waiting to be invaded by another army. And they're using the apes to build sort of this primitive wall made out of wood. And this actually impresses the general, and he seems like a really, really bad guy up until... Oh no, he's still a bad guy through the whole movie, but he does get some justification to his actions in the next scene. He basically reveals that the reason he killed his own men is because there's a disease going around. That the simian flu that exterminated the humans has mutated, and it causes infected humans to mentally devolve into primitive animals, depriving them of their intelligence. Essentially, anyone that gets infected, he kills, and he burns all their belongings to, stop the spread of the infection. And essentially, the other army disagrees with this, and they believe that it should be treated medically. So this gives some moral justification to the colonel's ruthlessness. I don't know if I mentioned he actually killed his own son who had the disease. And he basically says that sacrifices must be made to ensure the survival of humanity. And the movie goes on. And the apes, Maurice, Rocket, and the little girl are outside. They find an underground tunnel, and they start devising a way to escape with the apes. And, basically, during this time, Caesar's been tortured and starved and exposed to the cold, and it actually is quite good at showing how bad this is. But the mute girl named Nova by Maurice sneaks into the facility to feed Caesar. Rocket allows himself to be captured to prevent Nova from being seen as she escapes, and then Caesar starts to formulate a plan to escape. Essentially, Nova also gives her doll as a gesture of kindness to Caesar while he's in a cage. And Caesar is brought out again to speak to... I actually don't know if he goes to speak to the Colonel or they just tie him up again. But the Colonel brings him out and he's like, what is this doll in your pen? Like, how did this get here? And he grabs it. And he's pretty confused by that. At this point, the escape plan starts going into effect, and the apes are escaping through the tunnel system below. They basically dug through the pen, and they're starting to escape, but Caesar's like, no, I'm going to go kill the Colonel for killing my family. So he's still kind of thinking about revenge. But he allows, or he tells his people to leave, his apes. And basically, the military starts attacking the facility, and the Colonel's nowhere to be found. Like, his troops are banging on the door, and they're like, Colonel, come out. And at this point, I'm thinking, like, oh, the Colonel's like a coward. Like, he didn't think they could win after all, because the military that's coming in is way more advanced. They have, like, helicopters and all this stuff. Like, it looks clear they're going to lose. Like, the Colonel's army's dead. But Caesar sneaks in, and he finds the Colonel completely incapacitated. Essentially, the doll was infected by the mute girl, and this is actually a really good plot twist, and it is kind of like weirdly sad to see what happened to the Colonel, because he was actually right. It clearly is completely unable to be contained, and the only way to save humanity would be to kill anyone that's infected. So the Colonel had a point, even though he was pretty evil. I mean, he still had a point. And at this point, Caesar puts the gun, or grabs his gun, and the Colonel grabs the gun but puts it to his own head. But Caesar refuses to do it, leaves the gun, and we hear a gunshot. So the Colonel killed himself, staying true to his principles, essentially. And he was actually quite a great villain by the end, because he had some of that moral justification. He had the conflicted nature, and he wasn't a hypocrite, actually. He did kill himself. And at this point, Caesar starts to escape. He tries to blow a fuel tank to destroy the wall where all the soldiers are actually shooting on the escaping apes. But he's shot by the very soldier he had let go at the beginning. So if you're not connecting the theme of mercy being a weakness and mercy endangering civilization or your people is a theme in this movie. We see it with the Colonel, who's proven right about not showing mercy to this disease and killing anybody that has it because it's too big of a threat to be allowed to flourish. And then we see it with Caesar, who's shot by the very man that he showed mercy to. But luckily, the traitor ape, Red, shoots the guy and saves Caesar. And then Caesar blows up the tank, destroying the wall. He escapes. The army celebrates victory, but then an avalanche happens, and the entire armies are destroyed and buried under the snow. But the apes have climbed the trees and survive. And they, like in Exodus, keep on journeying till they finally get to their promised land, which is like this beautiful area with a lake. And this is when it's revealed that Caesar has not stopped bleeding. And in a conversation with Maurice, he basically gets to, sit back and smile and watch what all his sacrifices have led to. He has brought his tribe and his son Cornelius to this promised land of peace where they won't be attacked. And yeah, Caesar sort of like lays down and presumably dies, and that's the end. And like I said, very good movie, a very good trilogy, and Caesar's a great character, and so was that Colonel. So we got two really amazing characters. But we're coming up on the end of our show here. I'd probably do a bit more, but I think we did a pretty good job. But that's been me, Nima Golbabai, on Rollercoaster in the Clouds, and yes, that's it. All right, peace out.